What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode.
Yes, welcome in. We have branched out. Now you have Big Noon Saturday, you have College Game Day, and the Beyond the Snap pregame show. If you are tuning in, you will realize that this is the wee pre hours before the last college football game of the year. Well, not this year, but of the season. Then we got to wait and then off season and then mess, right? But we got a good one. We have perhaps two of the most interesting storylines through this year meeting tonight in the national championship game. Ohio State, they thought their season was over when they got ended by Michigan, but the 12-team playoff gave them new life. They've been playing with their hair on fire, like it's their last chance, like they're going to win. And Notre Dame, they had an incredible season. There's no other way to say it. They took a loss in week 2 to NIU, but they've since won 13 straight games. They found a way to win. They've been creative. They've been amazing. They've been absolutely stunning. I don't really think that there's any way that this is a terrible game or that we will not be satisfied with the result of this year's season, as sad as it is to see it go. But in this episode, we're going to break down the game, give you some keys to the game, and maybe a couple little things to look forward to next year.
Yeah, so let's just get it kicked off straight away. Anyways, so today we're going to be watching, of course, the finale. Like Kieran said, the Fighting Irish will be taking on the good old-fashioned Buckeyes. As I like to I call this grit versus money. Which one matters more? What matters more, discipline or talent? It goes either way. Of course, we have on one side, we got the Scarlett Red, we got the Buckeyes. They have all the talent in the world. They have all the recruiting classes in the world. They have the five-star athletes of the five-star athletes in the universe. They're stacked. They are the Georgia. They are the Texas. I would argue they have less discipline. But on the other side, we have a very, very well-coached team, a staple Texas or a staple football program, a team that is literally built for this. They are the American team. They were the only team, in fact, fun fact, that they were the only team that had a national broadcasting network. So when people used to watch football, they used to only hear about Notre Dame football. And yeah, we're watching a battle of the blue bloods, the old fashioned versus the new teams. This will be, I believe, Ohio State chasing their 10th championship title, and this will be Notre Dame coming back from a huge drought of not even making it to the playoffs in so long to now being back here, being the staple. What are the implications? What's going to happen in this game? Kieran, kick us off. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so there are a lot of interesting matchups in this game on the field. There are 22 players on both sides of the ball that are going to be participating in this matchup, and we'll get into that. But I think the most interesting two people in the building come tonight will be Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman. Now, you may say it's the players that count, it's the players that are going to win them the game, and you would be right. But what you're missing is that Marcus Freeman has coached his way out of some big, big holes this year. He's managed to get his team back into it. He's managed to get his guys ready to go. He is the ultimate motivator. He's a great leader. He doesn't take credit for it. He is the epitome of a servant leader and just an overall really great coach and person. So I think that if he's able to pull out the kind of stuff you saw against Georgia, subbing everybody, the kind of stuff you saw against Penn State, being able to coach the clock perfectly to make it line up just how he wanted for Mitch Jeter's field goal, being able to just find a way to win and inspire his guys when it mattered most. I don't know if y'all have heard his halftime speech from the Penn State game. It's been all around the media, and it is excellent. It is exactly what you want from a football coach. He's not beating his guys up. He's not chasing after plays they didn't make in the first half. He is inspiring them to go get the win, and that's what they did. So ultimately, I think Notre Dame has a lot to hang their hat on, but I know that they want more. And on the other side, you have Ryan Day, someone who has put up, aside from the Arizona State game, probably Arizona State, Texas, probably the most inexcusable coaching performance of the year. He, there is a lot of blame you could lay at the feet of the players of Ohio State for that Michigan loss, but almost all of it is really on Ryan Day. He had a horrible strategy going in and flat out does not know how to beat Michigan. And that, I think, has affected his coaching in this playoff run. I think it's galvanized his players, but affected his coaching. He's made some questionable decisions at times. Now, usually his team's been up by so much it didn't matter, but he has made some very questionable decisions in terms of play calls, in terms of getting his guys comfortable, in terms of not running the football a more against Texas. All of these things, you have to think that there was something to be found there. There was a more points that he could have had. And he has probably the best roster we've seen in quite a while in college football. And he's expected to win. He should win. But for some reason, I just think Notre Dame's going to find a way to. But Kirtan, let's get into the 10 keys of the game.
Okay, so let's get this started. Starting with number one. And guys, these are all mine original ideas, just saying. Okay, number one, quarterback play. We are looking at two of, honestly, I would say it's the premier quarterback, and I would honestly argue this is what the transfer portal was created for. We're seeing Will Howard going against Riley Leonard, both players who transferred from one from Duke, one from Kansas State, both went to these two teams and have excelled. Now, I have not seen any weaknesses in their games. I think these are one of the two best. This is what the transfer portal was made for, and we're really going to see their play styles come alive. So, of course, we saw Will Howard had to battle with a little injury on his hand that may have affected the way he played, but I think he's going to be ready. He's going to be looking for more options, and that Texas game, I think, really served him well. He understood the task, he understood what he could do, and he realized that he can throw to more receivers than just Jeremiah Smith, and he can finally take advantage of it. He's now, honestly, I would say Ohio State has not played a very, very, very hard-nosed team in a while, and I think Texas was a good awakening for them. And now you might be saying, like, isn't that kind of unfair because they did lose to Michigan, they did lose, of course, to a whole bunch of good teams, Oregon, but I don't think Oregon was ever up to par. We said this in the last episode. As we saw, they literally destroyed them, blew them into oblivion. And Michigan, I think, is always a fluke. You can't predict rivalry games. So, for that matter, I don't think they really played anyone as hard as they did against Texas. And now that they realize that they can beat Texas, they probably feel like they can beat anyone. I mean, when you beat Texas, you can stand differently from the pack. So, with that being said, he's gotten talent. And then looking at Riley Leonard, I think Riley Leonard is just a really interesting awakening to the whole college football system because we have not seen a mobile quarterback exceed expectations in so long. And both these teams have been focusing on the systematic quarterback, sit in the pocket, throw. Well, I can always say this and I'll say it again. The disruptors in our league and the disruptors in college football are those who can scramble. Lamar Jackson, he was playing back then. Lamar Jackson at both levels. RG3 in college. All the quarterbacks that can move are the ones you're going to be afraid of. And Riley Leonard really showed his wheels. He showed what he can do against Penn State. He also can do against Georgia. And this is the next level. When you have such a dominant offensive line and you have a quarterback who's not willing to just sit back and just take a sack and he's willing to fight for yards, it's a dangerous combo. So both these games are going to be interesting, or both these players are going to be very interesting to watch throughout the day. And I think a lot of this game is going to be based off of how they play. Okay, Mac, what's number two?
So number two is flipping to the other side of the ball, the defensive line. Both of these teams have had outstanding pass rush and honestly just a great, capable defense all year long. They're the number one and number two defenses of the country, which is important to mention. Statistically, of course, Texas is number one in our hearts. Um, but their defensive line play is very important. You saw Jack Sawyer make the play of the game against Texas, arguably the reason why they're in the national championship. You've seen Notre Dame's consistent defensive play escalate them and elevate them to another level, especially along the defensive line. Being able to disrupt the passer, not allow any of the quarterbacks they face in the playoffs to have a rhythm and to have success. Georgia downed them. Penn State, Aller did not have a good day. They've all been harassed. They've all been constantly goaded into making mistakes and taking sacks. That, if they could transfer that right onto Will Howard, I think Notre Dame is able to win the game. And you also have to consider that offensive line is the relative weakness of that Ohio State team. Yes, I know they've been mauling. I know they've been very good and consistent in protection. But compared to everything else, the offensive line and the secondary on defense are the weaknesses of the Ohio State team. That is where you can get after them. So ultimately, that I think is where the game will be decided. If Notre Dame can win the line of scrimmage when Ohio State is on offense and do it consistently, sometimes like Texas did, but you didn't see it all the time, right? And if Ohio State can be stopped from harassing and preventing the scrambling of Riley Leonard, then I think you're going to see a defensive battle. But if Notre Dame controls the line of scrimmage, I think they win, and that's why it's a key.
Okay, yeah. So I agree with that 100%. Defense is going to be absolutely incredibly important coming into this game. But next is ball security and just overall turnovers in the turnover battle. Now, both these teams are very capable of playing a very consistent game, make smart passes. Of course, I talked highly of the quarterback situation. But what's really going to come into play is who can cause the most turnovers, who can hold the other team to a 3-and-out, and who can take advantage. So the first thing I wanted to say was let's take into account what Jack Sawyer did. K-Mac already said it. Jack Sawyer played a fantastic game against Texas at the very end. He was disruptive. He stopped them from doing anything really, and they weren't able to move the ball on that, especially on that last drive when they were on the goal line. They went backwards. Caleb Downs, great defense. But what I do want to bring attention to is I don't think we're talking necessarily turnovers and third downs. I think it's really going to be a running game. And I know that's kind of off of what I've been saying about the turnover battle and who's going to control the ball and time. I think it's really going to come down to running. So, of course, we got three star-started running backs: Trayvon Henderson, um, Quinshon Judkins, and Jeremiah Love. Now, here's the thing. I think Jeremiah Love, I think all these guys are great, but I'm more worried about the fact that whoever cannot establish a run game it's kind of over for them. So, like K-Mac said, they who do you call it? Ohio State. They were able to control the run. They weren't able, or what am I saying? I'm getting confused. They were able to establish a run game, but they never went back to it enough. That's why Texas was able to play such good defense, going over top, covering players like Jeremiah Smith and players like Emeka Egbuka. So that leaves only Cordell Tate to be he was unmarked for most of the game. Now, I don't think Ohio State wants to play that football anymore. That was a very, very dangerous game because Texas could have won at any point if they actually understood who should play quarterback and not who's like the number one guy. No offense. I mean, come on. Like Quinn, you could have played better. But I think they want to establish a run game. And same for Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame wants to get into a game where they have to rely on passing because let's be honest, they are unmatched in the secondary. And that might be a hot take. A lot of people might say, oh, they got great wide receivers from this position, from this position. They have the Austin Westlake guy. No, I don't think you want to match up against these corners from Ohio State. I think that's a lost battle. These players, they're more talented, no offense. I think they're more disciplined when it comes down to it. But if you can establish a run game with Jeremiah Love and just get him going, then integrate your passing with your tight end, with your wide receiver, just short, rinky passes, and just move the chains, you're going to be doing so much better. And I think that's the main goal. Control clock, control turnovers, and win the scrimmage. If you can win the rushing game from the very beginning, it's over.
With that thoughtful analysis, we're going to move on. So, fourth, quarterback poise, quarterback decision making, and I would even extend this to play calling. So, we've seen in playoff games certain plays be called at certain times by certain people that led to certain outcomes that weren't ideal. I think that both the decision making of the quarterbacks and the poise and play calling of the offensive coordinators is going to be a big factor. And I think this is where Notre Dame has an edge. I think that if the pass rush is starting to unsettle Will Howard due to his, let's just say, less than ideal scrambling skills, I really think it's going to start to weigh on him, and it's going to start to affect the play calling and his confidence. Because when Chip Kelly dials up that shot, if Will Howard thinks he's going to get hit, he's going to pull it, he's going to throw it to the DB, he's going to chuck it out of bounds, through the back of the end zone, whatever, right? But if Howard is confident, if he's hitting those crossers like we saw against Texas, if he's hitting that run game is hitting, if he's hitting the tight end out of the backfield, whatever, right? If that's working, then I think that's going to lead to some more explosive plays. Same for the Notre Dame side of the ball, right? If Riley Leonard's able to get some scrambles, if he's evading the pass rush well, because you know it'll be there, if he is getting the ball to his weapons, Jeremiah Love, mostly, and as well as tight ends and any receivers you can find, right? If he's able to do that, then they're comfortable. If you can keep your quarterback comfortable through 4 quarters and keep him poised, I think Riley Leonard has a bit of a poised edge here. I'll be honest. I've seen Will Howard start throwing picks and it start going downhill. We saw this in the Michigan game. I think Riley Leonard is just going to keep his head down, maybe pray a little bit and keep going, right? And I think that's going to be valuable. This is where I think Notre Dame has an edge because I think anytime Marcus Freeman and the offensive team dial up a shot play, I think Leonard's going to be ready to execute. I don't think he's afraid of getting hit. I think he's fine being harassed. And I think that that'll make a much more interesting game than some people are giving credit for.
Yeah. Okay, and again, now y'all know exactly what we're talking about when we go down to the QB play. We got it from both sides, from my angle, from K-Mac's angle. Now, again, I'm going to go into in depth on the O-line situation. So, if you're a number one recruit, hypothetically speaking, you're the best O-lineman in the country, there's really one program that you keep into consideration, and that is Notre Dame. Notre Dame has probably one of the highest pro potentials when it comes to O-linemen, O-tackles, anything on the front five. And that is exactly what they have still. Notre Dame has a fantastic offensive line. They understand how to play disciplined football. It is just how Notre Dame is raised. And I would say the same thing for Ohio State. Now, what we have to keep in mind is Ohio State has been dealing with lots and lots of injuries. They had an injury to their center, I believe, who tore his ACL during one of the practices. Now, of course, that's going to come into play. But how well can you hold that offensive line? And I think that's going to be another point to Notre Dame. Now, I just want you to keep track of where we're going with all these situations. Will Howard and Riley Leonard, who do you think we have an edge for? We'll tell you at the end our predictions. But I just want y'all to keep in mind when we mention all these different things, who do you think has the edge at quarterback? When we talk about running backs and their skill level, who do you think has the edge? When it comes to O-linemen, I'm going to say this flat out. I think that Notre Dame has a more disciplined O-line. They have a more healthy O-line, and they're going to be able to pull off the run game better. Now, you may disagree with me. You might say, well, look at the sheer size of Ohio State. Look at the size of Notre Dame and go compare apples to apples. Well, of course, we're talking about a whole different ballgame. We're talking about a college football playoff game. Who do you think you're going to perform? Who's going to perform well in the moment? So I think Jeremiah Love, he's been slow for the last couple of days, or for the last couple of games. He's going to pick it up right here. This is where he gets going. This is where everything matters. I think Trayvon Henderson, he's going to do great. I think Quinshon Judkins, he's going to do great. But I don't know if they're going to be as prolific as Jeremiah Love. So when it comes to running back and offensive line, I have Notre Dame taking the edge. Just saying.
All right. Well, with that bold prediction, see what I did there? All right. So, defensive secondary, which I talked about as a weakness for Ohio State. And I'm going to say this is another point for Notre Dame, just in terms of strength. I don't think the matchup is necessarily better for Notre Dame, but I think Notre Dame's secondary is better than Ohio State's. They both have outstanding safeties and really here's what I would say. In safeties, I would say they're pretty similar. In corners, I think Notre Dame has an edge. You have Caleb Downs for Ohio State, great safety. Xavier Watts for Notre Dame, great safety. You then compare the corners. You have Igbinosun and Christian Gray. I think Gray has the edge. I don't know if you've watched Igbinosun play, right? The reason I know really who he is and what he's doing in coverage and I'm always watching him is because he has a bad history of penalties and getting burned. It's either one or the other. So he's either giving up big yardage or giving up big penalty yardage. And that's what I've seen throughout the playoff games. A lot of teams are going to target him, they're going to pick at him, make him get aggressive with his hands, and then take the shots. Christian Gray, on the other hand, when he's been targeted, when teams have been trying to go after him like Penn State did, it hasn't worked. He's been playing great despite being very young. I think Notre Dame has the edge there. Now, are Ohio State's receivers better? Yes. But I just think that if Notre Dame, if they're able to keep pretty hands off, but still cover well, and you can allow passing yards, you just can't allow big explosive plays. And if they're able to do that, I think it's a massive win for Notre Dame. And I think Ohio State secondary is going to get grabby. They're going to get aggressive. And if Notre Dame could take advantage of that, like they did on Penn State secondary, it could get ugly.
Yeah. Okay, next is kind of a boring one, but we always have to talk about it because this is a big part of football. Special teams. And what are the implications? So I think, I'll give my personal opinion. I think this game is either going to be a straight up just beat down by one of the teams. One team is just going to destroy the other, or it's going to be very, very close. I don't think there's anything in the middle. But I think special teams is going to come into it big time. If Ohio State can play as well as they've been doing on just covering, on just playing football to the best of their degree, they're going to be hard to beat. It's just straight up. Let's not lie about it. Same thing goes when I talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame, again, let's not forget, when they played Georgia, they played insanely well. They held Georgia to minimal points. They were actually getting a kick return. They took a kick return to the house. I wanted to keep that added as well. So special teams is going to be a big factor. Who's going to be more apt to play? Who's going to be ready for the game? And in all honesty, I'm going to have to say it's going to be down the middle. I think special teams can go either way. Both have seasoned kickers. Both know what they're doing. They're not Arizona State where they're just praying to God their kicker knows how to play football. So you never really understand what's going to go on. But if it was me, I would say that this game's going to come down to who can pin the other in worse field position. So that's my take. Run with it. Don't run with it. It's up to y'all. All right, Kieran, what's next?
So the next, and I think maybe I had talked about it before, I think it's probably one of the most important keys to a game, coaching adjustments. If Chip Kelly and Ryan Day can find some magic, I think they're going to win. But I have more faith in Marcus Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
He has coached an immaculate playoff run. And keep in mind, I don't just mean the last 3 games. I mean every game since week 3. That's playoffs for Notre Dame. They've been playing playoff football for a long time. So I really think that Marcus Freeman has the edge here. He's made adjustments before and gone into the locker room down, come out, and absolutely dominated. And you can see his team shift and morph to its opponent and find the way to win. I have said I think they're going to do it again. Marcus Freeman is quickly becoming one of the best coaches in college football and absolutely deserves the plaudits. And again, I think that's another Notre Dame win.
Yep. Okay, and then get into it. Let's go with what's next. We got big play potential. Now, this one is just a fun one. Both these teams have had ridiculous plays in the playoffs. Both these teams are equipped to play football to the best of their ability, and they both rely heavily on big plays. If you want me to recap some, I just said one, the kickoff return against Georgia to open up the second half. How killer was that to the morale of Georgia? The screen pass in the second quarter with 20 seconds left, that when Texas was riding high on all of their momentum, crashing down. This is what this game is going to come down to. Who is going to open up the game with the biggest play? Who's going to strike fear into the other team early and is really going to take note of it? Sorry about that. Who's really going to take note of that moment and who's going to set themselves apart? I think that this game is going to come down to a couple of flashy big plays. Who's going to throw the ball 30 yards down the field? Which running back is going to break it for a bunch of yards? And those are the plays that everyone needs to keep in mind. So big play potential is on watch this day. If we are talking about the weather and we're looking at tornadoes, this is a Category 5. Watch for the big play. This is about to go down crazy. All right, and then the last one came back. Which one do we got?
All right. So the last key to the game is clutch and toughness. I think Notre Dame is the tougher team, and I think they're more clutch because believe it or not, Ohio State, yes, they've had it when they needed it, but they've been handed a lot of games. Tennessee, sleepwalk. Texas, ugh, I don't want to talk about it. But I think we could agree that despite their great performance, I think Oregon's the standout there. But despite their great performance, Ohio State has left a lot on the field or has had given a lot by other teams. So I really think that Notre Dame has the advantage here. And I'll be honest, I didn't feel very good about my Notre Dame prediction before this podcast. Before we went through all this, before we talked about it, before we debated it, and before we decided it. But now I do. I feel so much better, so much more confident, and so much more excited to say that I am with Coach Lou Holtz. If Notre Dame loses, it will be just to preserve Ryan Day's career. Go Irish. Give me Notre Dame 30-24.
Alrighty, and now I believe K-Mac is right with the toughness, but I don't know about the clutchness. I think one of the hardest things you can do in football is go against the Texas offense with all of their star-started players, with Kelvin Banks, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, and stop them dead in their tracks on a 4th and goal. Strip a fumble and take it to the house. I don't know if you can get more clutch than that. For that reason, and for the sheer dominance that Ohio State has performed and has shown, they beat Oregon, the number 1 team, and they beat them bad. They beat them to a pulp. It was bad. They played Tennessee, and they left nothing to be desired. They showed everything on the field. That Texas game, yeah, there were some ups and downs, but you still stepped away with a win, and a big one as well. And on the other side, Notre Dame, I think that you've played the much more difficult schedule for who you had to go against. You had to go through Georgia. You had to go through Penn State. But I don't know if you can survive in Ohio State. I think Ohio State has been clicking recently, and I honestly think Kieran hit it right on the nail right on the head. Michigan, it strengthened the bond of that entire Ohio State team. That is why they're here, because they weren't going to let the whole season go away because of one loss. They came into the season with 3 goals: beat Michigan, win the Big Ten championship, win the Natty. Now, you can't beat Michigan because somehow you're allergic to them. You can't win the Big Ten because you're allergic to Michigan, but you can for sure go win the national championship. You have the time. You have all the players in the world. Go back to the days of Urban Meyer. Channel your inner actual coach, please, Ryan Day, for the love of God. Please play like a real coach for once and show us why the Scarlets are always at the top of the game and always are the best. For that reason, I have it being 42-27. It pains me to say this, but the Buckeyes. Oh, man, I hate that mascot so much.
42-27?
Yeah.
Holy.
I think it's
Okay,
going to be
well,
close or it's going to be a absolute domination. I think it's going to lean the latter. I think we're going to go see a good old-fashioned Georgia TCU game. Maybe not as bad, but I don't know. I don't know if this is the right time or place for Notre Dame. I think they're a little over their heads.
all right. Well, as I guess Kirtan is going the way of Josh Payton, doubting Notre Dame to a championship. As for me, I believe we are on the crusade together, and I would love it if it ended in a shiny golden national
I would too.
championship.
I would too. I do not keep it a buck. It's just I like to go off of stats, and based off everything I've read, I don't think you can beat the Scarlet.
See,
So like
you
I
can
said,
get all analytical, and I just believe. I just know it here, right here, that Notre Dame is the best team in the nation.
Well, we are going to find out in T minus 3 hours. We will see you then. Peace.